my very best. If you got kids around, maybe this is time to have them tune out, because fair warning, it's going to get fairly graphic from here, probably till about the end of the show. But I thought it was worth repeating because the stories we need to talk about them, because I think this is how I get to honor some of the guys that didn't make it back. So when we went into Fallujah, it was a free fire zone. Rules of engagement were if it's downrange and it's got wind in its lungs, you can fucking kill it. Yeah. So when guys that have been pent up, that have been, told they can't do what they were trained to do for long enough, finally get to let it out after being under a microscope. In that tribe that we have, if there's one thing Uncle Sam does really, really well, it's create some of the most deadly killers on earth. That's what they're good at. That's not, I don't know, double-edged sword if I've ever heard one, but they take guys that would die for their country, and I mean, they're absolutely idealists, and the guys next to them, and they give them all the tools and knowledge that you could possibly ever hope for. And I mean, I'll tell you right now, as a guy that was over at Force Reconnaissance, man, it was, you learn all the time. I mean, it is, the learning's never done. Take these guys and give them skill sets, man, and knowledge in warfare that most people could never dream of, and then let them loose on an entire city, and you will see some shit that you'll never ever forget. I'll tell you that. You'll never fucking forget it. And what I wanted to convey is the loss of humanity in young men who have been told that this is the path to glory. This is the path to valor. This is, this is how legends are made, and the most deadly fighting force that the earth has ever seen, that we know of anyway. Boy, the gravity of that situation with people downrange, and now I will say, they did some psyops and said, hey, get the fuck out of town, right? You got until this day, and then hell on earth is coming. Some people didn't leave, man. Lots of old men. Like, dude, I've seen Anfal. I've seen Saddam. I've seen all the terrible shit that's happened in Iran since the 50s. Like, they're tired. They're done running. Like, there was a lot of old dudes that got just absolutely killed in spot, being extremely, I don't know, peaceful dudes. I mean, one of the first guys I saw, I think, was probably about 60, laying flat down. He was sitting Indian style, had collapsed because he'd been killed. And I don't even know by what, but when we came across him, that was what it was. And I was just like, boy, like, it doesn't even hit you till, 10, 15, 20 years later. But I was older, and I say older, it was like 24. We got pushing through the city, and we're headed from the north to the south. And we get down to the south part of Fallujah, and there's nothing. Like, you got the Euphrates River on the west, and you've got some fields, and then you've got desert to the south. And, this is where these guys were, the rest of the fighters were making a stronghold down there. And the fighting got extremely thick. It was extremely intense. And in those situations, what we were doing at that point is we had learned, call up the D9, which is a giant caterpillar, huge, like cat, like a bulldozer. It's completely up armored. It's got windows like a foot thick, and maybe not quite thick, but, Lance Corporal, driving this giant wrecking machine. If we received fire, we're just like, yeah, we had lost so many guys at that point. Bulldozed the building. And this was just common practice, but I remember this one instance more than any because of the lack of humanity in the situation. So a building was crushed. It was pretty good size, had quite a few guys in it, and the rooftop around it is just lined with young Marines that are calling out all sorts of shit from the top of the rooftops at this young corporal who's in this D9 on a pile of rubble. And there's one dude who hasn't succumbed to his wounds yet. And man, at that point, everybody starts kind of pointing things out. And man, that guy, he didn't last, a hell of a lot longer. I think somebody, put a round in him or something like that. But the Lance Corporal who was driving the D9, he hits that diesel a little bit, like gives it a couple vroom, vroom, and you hear the turbo and the cat charge up twice, and then he gives the get some sign. Basically, we're going double time, we're going to do something, right? And he just takes that cat and he just spins it right over this dude. I was just like, oh. Everybody is cheering. I mean, the loss of humanity in that moment, I was just like, man, we talked about honor a lot in the Marine Corps. I think there was a lot of honor in that. It's like honor is if you have to kill swiftly. The torture and the inhumanity, man, there's nothing in that. Nothing.